Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Have you ever noticed how the world is constantly shifting, even in seemingly stable industries like tourism, and wondered what's truly driving those subtle but significant changes? Today, we're going to get into the evolving landscape of Asian tourism in Britain. It's not just about numbers bouncing back, It seems to be a fundamental change in who is visiting and how they're doing it. We'll look at what seems genuinely new, what might be maybe a little overblown in some reports, and what it all means for you, whether you're traveling or just curious about these global trends. The idea is to really understand what's going on beneath the surface. So the core observation, looking at the analysis, points to this really quite dramatic shift in Asian tourists returning to Britain post-pandemic. It's painted as less about those big coach parties we used to see,
Right.
and more about independent, often younger travelers. This is this whole FIT thing, free and independent travel.
Yes, and what's really striking is the demographic change, especially among Chinese visitors. If you look at the 2023 data, something like 46% were aged 16-34. That's a huge chunk.
Almost half, yeah.
Exactly. And this younger group, they're not just younger, they plan travel completely differently. They're using social apps, things like WeChat, and particularly Xiaohongshu, people often call it RE. They build their own trips. And crucially, this means they often stay longer in one place. They're not just doing the Whirlwind Europe tour. It's a slower, maybe more immersive experience.
But that difference in style sounds key. The article mentions someone, Yuxia from Beijing, choosing York specifically because she saw it on social media, flew into Manchester, based herself in Cumbria, but made a point of visiting York. That feels very self-directed.
It perfectly illustrates it. She saw something specific, likely on RE, and built it into her independent itinerary.
But does this focus on social media darlings like York mean other places get left behind? Or is it an opportunity?
That's a really good question. It certainly means places like York are tapping into a new stream of visitors. For, let's say, less famous spots, the challenge is understanding these new digital pathways, finding their own hook. And tied right into that, a big part of the hook is this powerful pull of, well, screen tourism.
Screen tourism, right. Set jetting. That's where it gets really interesting, understanding what actually motivates people to choose one place over another.
Precisely. Because for long-haul markets, especially China and India, the UK already scores very highly for history and culture. That's a given. But what seems quite distinct is how likely they are to visit places they've specifically seen on screen.
Ah, okay.
It creates this direct, almost emotional connection between the media they consume and their travel plans.
Yeah.
They want to step into the scene.
And this isn't just a niche thing, right? We're talking real economic impact. And you think about the Scottish Highlands and the whole Harry Potter effect, that's been huge.
Absolutely massive. Or, Glenn Nevis appearing in Harry Potter, but also doubling as the Himalayas in a big Bollywood film.
Right.
Bay Mayan Chot Mayan.
Right.
Even smaller places like Whitby benefit hugely from the Bram Stoker's Dracula connection.
Yeah, that connection is powerful.
And Visit Britain's own research backs this up strongly. It shows something like 84% of Chinese tourists and 79% of Indian tourists visiting a film or TV location.
84%. Wow.
Compare that to, say, French tourists, where it's only about 47%. It suggests a different kind of engagement with media and place.
A much stronger link between screen and destination for those particular markets.
It really does. It points to this deep interest in narrative, where the place itself becomes part of the story they want to experience. And that cultural pull, combined with some practical things, leads us nicely to the story of Indian tourism, which is, well, it's remarkably strong right now.
Strong how? Just numbers recovering.
More than recovering. Air links from India to the UK have actually surpassed 2019 levels. In 2024, we're talking about roughly 144 weekly departures. That's around 40,000 seats every week, coming from 9 different Indian airports straight into the UK.
40,000 seats a week.
Yes. And that capacity figure, just looking at nonstop routes, is an incredible 49% above 2019 levels.
Wow. Almost 50% higher than pre-pandemic. That's significant.
It's huge. And if you connect that back to the independent traveler trend,
yeah,
then having all those direct flights makes it much easier for younger Indians, or indeed any Indian travelers, to bypass London if they want to and explore other regions directly.
Exactly. It facilitates that dispersion the article talks about. It makes exploring the UK much more accessible. Given the UK is already the most visited European destination for Indians, this boost in direct flights isn't just filling planes. It's actively enabling different kinds of trips within Britain. Okay, so that paints a picture of quite dynamic growth and changing patterns, particularly with Indian visitors and younger Chinese FITs. But let's shift gears slightly. While this narrative of change is compelling, where might it be oversimplifying things? Or maybe missing crucial context? Because getting the full picture, the nuances, is really important for understanding what's truly going on. Like that idea that keeps popping up, no more coach parties. Is that really accurate?
That's a prime example of where the narrative needs a bit more texture. Sounds good, suggests a total revolution, but it's an overstatement. While the FIT segment is undeniably growing fast, China officially reauthorized outbound group tours to the UK back in August 2023.
Okay, so they weren't permanently banned or anything.
Not at all. Britain is still part of China's ADS scheme, that's the Approved Destination Status Scheme, specifically for facilitating group travel. The UK government guidance on those visas is still active. The thing is, group itineraries have really long lead times. We're talking months, maybe even a year plus, to organize the logistics, the contracts, everything.
Especially after a total shutdown like the pandemic?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So structurally, the mechanism for group tours is back in place. They are returning. We should definitely expect to see more coaches on UK roads again. It's just happening alongside this boom in independent travel. It's an and, not an either.
That's a much clearer picture. So it's evolution, not necessarily revolution, old models rebuilding alongside the new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that presents its own challenges for destinations and businesses, having to cater to both.
Right, the quick group versus the slower independent explorer.
But beyond that, there are other significant factors, sort of headwinds, that seem a bit underplayed in some analyses, especially regarding recovery potential, particularly high-spend recovery.
You mean UK policy choices?
Yes. There are a couple of really big ones that are acting as a brake, especially when it comes to attracting potentially high-spending Asian shoppers.
Okay, what are they specifically?
Well, first, and arguably the most talked about, is the removal of VAT-free shopping back in 2021, the so-called tourist tax. Industry groups consistently argue this makes the UK less competitive. But it's not just them. Independent studies, by outfits like Oxford Economics and the CEBR, they've documented this effect. They argue it actively diverts wealthy visitors.
And they're spending on luxury goods.
Exactly. Towards places like Paris or Milan, where they can still get that VAT refund. For someone buying high-end items, saving 20%, that can absolutely sway where they choose to shop or even which city they prioritize on a European trip.
So it's a direct hit to potential GDP, redirecting that spend elsewhere. It makes the UK a less attractive value proposition for that specific high-value segment.
Absolutely. And the second factor is the accumulation of various friction costs. Things like visa fees, which are still required for Chinese and Indian nationals, but also the general noise around the new ETA system, even though it doesn't directly hit them yet.
The electronic travel authorization.
Yes. That £16 fee applies to nationalities that didn't previously need a visa. But these changes, plus things like higher air passenger duty compared to some EU neighbors, it all adds up. It increases the perceived hassle factor or the overall cost of choosing Britain, particularly for people planning multi-stop European tours. It might just tip the balance towards Schengen alternative. Right. It creates these little hurdles that collectively make competitors look a bit more appealing or easier to navigate. Precisely. It chips away at the competitive edge.
And speaking of access, you mentioned the strong Indian flight recovery. What about China? The narrative sometimes suggests the shift to FIFTs is happening despite Airlinks, but you hinted capacity is improving there too.
Yes, and that's another important nuance. Direct air access from China is crucial for enabling travel beyond London, especially for FIFTs. And the capacity has been rebuilding, maybe more quietly than the Indian story, but significantly nonetheless. By 2024, Britain had regained about 100 weekly departures from China. That's roughly 29,000 seats a week, connecting 12 Chinese airports to 4 UK airports.
Okay, 100 weekly flights is quite substantial.
It's a very notable rebuild. And this improved access directly supports that pattern of smaller groups or individuals staying longer and exploring regions outside the capital. It gives them the physical means to do it easily.
It makes that dispersal pattern feasible, not just aspirational.
Exactly. More direct flights to more UK airports naturally facilitates that kind of travel.
And connecting back to how these FITs plan their trips, you mentioned social media earlier. The original analysis touched on TikTok, but you emphasized Xiaohongshu, or AGAD, for the Chinese market. Why is that distinction important?
It's crucial because while TikTok exists, Xiaohongshu, RGD, is overwhelmingly the dominant platform for travel inspiration and detailed planning among younger Chinese women who are a huge part of this FIT wave.
So it's more targeted.
Highly targeted. It's very visual, very focused on user-generated content. Think Beautiful photos, short practical videos, detailed mini itineraries. It's less about viral dances and more about, here's how I spent 3 days in the Cotswolds, or must-visit cafes in Edinburgh. It has this incredible power to turn relatively unknown spots into must-visit or check-in locations almost overnight. York is a perfect example of a city that's benefited directly from this RED effect.
Right.
So understanding RED's role gives much better context for why places like York or Whitby are suddenly seeing these independent travelers, rather than just saying it's social media. It's this specific platform driving much of that behavior for that key demographics, like a peer-to-peer visual travel guide.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about the specific ecosystem they operate in. Okay, so let's pull this together. We've looked at the rise of FATs, the screen tourism effect, the surprising robustness from India, but also the nuances around coach tours and policy headwinds. What does the bigger picture look like now? Where are the numbers, and what should we really be watching going forward?
Well, the provisional data from 2023 definitely shows recovery underway, but with that different mix we've discussed. From mainland China, the UK saw about 368,000 visits. The average spend was quite high, around $2,167 per visit.
Okay.
From India, it was actually a record year, 604,000 visits, generating about $804 million in total spend.
A record from India. Interesting.
Yes. And looking ahead, 2024 and 2025 are expected to be stronger still. You've got the momentum from India's flight capacity and this ongoing surge in FATs from China. However, that spend per trip figure, especially from potentially high-spending groups, is likely being held back somewhat by UK price levels generally, but also very specifically by that lack of VAP refunds.
Right, so visitor numbers might be recovering while even exceeding pre-pandemic levels in India's case, but the value captured per visitor could be higher if policy were different. It really does sound like this emerging two-track Asia market you mentioned.
I think that's a useful way to think about it. On track one, you have China. It's characterized by these younger, independent FETs planning via RD and WeChat, leading to more nights spent exploring outside London, seeking those unique, shareable experiences. But their luxury shopping spend is dampened by the VAT situation. And meanwhile, the traditional group tours are slowly rebuilding in the background.
Okay, track one. China, FIT led, dispersed, but spend capped. What's track two?
Track two is India. Here you see a strong rise in both VFR visiting friends and relatives, which has always been significant, and also pure leisure travel. This is really buoyed by all those nonstop flights. And for Indian leisure travelers, those on-screen Britain drivers film locations, maybe Premier League football culture, are still really powerful pulls, drawing them beyond London, too.
Fascinating. Different drivers, different dynamics, but both contributing to this changing landscape. So what are the practical takeaways? What should people be watching out for?
3 key things, I think. First, absolutely keep an eye on the VAT-free debate. If there were a U-turn, if VAT-free shopping was reintroduced, it would instantly make Britain a much more attractive proposition for luxury shoppers from both China and India. It could genuinely shift spending patterns back from Paris or Milan almost overnight.
A potential game changer for retail and hospitality in certain areas.
Definitely. Second, watch routes beyond Heathrow. More direct flights from both China and India landing directly into places like Manchester, Edinburgh, maybe Birmingham, that would physically embed the regional dispersal we're seeing. The data suggests airlines are looking at this, so it's a real possibility. It would make exploring the whole UK even easier.
Hardwiring that trend, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And third, for anyone in the business, tourism bodies, attractions, hotels, the marketing mix has to evolve. To reach this new wave, especially the Chinese FATs, Xiangshu RD isn't optional anymore. It's pretty much mandatory. Alongside Instagram, which is key for the Indian market, the content needs to be short, practical, visually appealing, geotagged, showing people how to visit these secondary cities and regions independently. That's what cuts through.
So focus on the right platforms with the right kind of user-generated, itinerary-focused content.
Precisely. That's what drives these FAT visits beyond the usual London circuit.
Okay, so summing up, the narrative about younger, independent Asian visitors discovering a different side of Britain beyond London, that definitely captures a real and exciting trend. The vibe is right.
Yes, that part feels accurate.
But critically, we need to remember, coach tours aren't history. They're on a delayed comeback, rebuilding slowly. They're still part of this complex, evolving picture.
It's a blended reality.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Well, it's a reminder that even in something like global tourism, the details really matter. Understanding the policy levers, the specific cultural drivers, the tech platforms, it gives you a much richer picture than just looking at headline trends. The big question for Britain, perhaps, is whether it can fully capitalize on this new wave of interest and turn rising visitor numbers into proportionally higher economic value. And it seems the answer to that might depend less on catching the next viral social media trend and more on those tangible policy choices that either smooth the path for visitors or put obstacles in their way, right from deciding on the trip to reaching the checkout. Thanks for listening. Follow us to stay updated with the latest insights on The Economist every day. And don't forget to like, comment, and share.